planning colleague Bob Hamlin, who is the Saco City planner and the president currently of the Eastern Trail Alliance. And I'll turn it over to Jim, and then Jim will introduce Bob's segment.
Okay.
And I'll tee up your...
That'd be great.
And yours is this one.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Jim Tasse. I know a bunch of you guys, and I think Somehow going to do that. Some of what I'm going to talk about hopefully will be new, but I'm knowing from some of the folks in the room that some of this is going to be familiar territory. I do work for the Bicycle Coalition of Maine as the education director, and in that capacity I also provide education on trail development and mountain bike education across the state. I am the president of the Greater Portland New England Mountain Bike Association, which is a group locally that promotes the development of trail systems for mountain bike and other use. And recently I've gotten involved with the Cape Elizabeth Conservation Commission, which has enabled me to get a real kind of in the weeds, town level involvement and understanding of trail issues. I want to begin by asking you guys, when I say multi-use trail, what do you think of?
Snowmobiles.
Bikes. Well, think about the type of trail. So a multi-use trail, what are you thinking of? What's the first thing that springs to mind?
Wide motorized.
Wide, motorized, sometimes multi-use being... I think that for a lot of people, multi-use trails, kind of evoke the kinds of things that we think of as, the traditional bike path. Something that's 8 to 10 feet wide, paved, the Eastern Prom or the back Cove Trail being great examples. The Eastern Trail that you're going to hear a little bit more about shortly, being a large-scale multi-use trail. The Mountain Division Trail, which runs on the old Mountain Division line railbed, which is also the Sebago to the Sea route. Sebago to the Sea is kind of a route overlay on a variety of trail systems, including several in the Portland Trails area. And I think that for a lot of people, when they think about multi-use trails, they're thinking about those things. But there's another type of multi-use trail system that's being embraced by communities across Maine, and that is single track. And I would go so far as to say we live right now in a golden age of single track. Here's some examples of what single track is. You see a couple of bikers on it. These are both from Yarmouth. Dan Ostry on the right, standing on a new kind of benched out area. In terms of defining single track, it's really the trail that you're thinking of that's more like a hiking trail. It's got a treadway of 18 to 24 inches wide. It exists in a corridor about 6 feet wide with about an 8-foot overhead clearance. It's a much more rustic and primitive trail than the multi-use bike path that you might be thinking of. It's really more like a hiking trail. But there are many benefits to single track trails. Number one being they are cheap and they are fast to build. They promote healthy lifestyles. As Kara was saying, if you're close to a trail system, you're more likely to be physically active, you're more likely to be outside. And certainly these things are easy to build and relatively cheap to build, and so they are a great tool for public health people. They help address that, the nature deficit disorder. So it's a great way to get people outside. And they are indeed multi-use trails. They are perfect for non-motorized activities: walking, running, trail biking, snowshoeing, trail running, dog walking, anything that you might want to do in the outdoors, they're perfect for, but they're really designed in a way that's kind of not encouraging for motorized use. Other benefits include, getting people more invested in the outdoors and in the natural environment. You get people outside in open space, they begin to value open space more, and it becomes a sort of reciprocal process where people begin to say, hey, this is pretty cool, I wish there was more of this stuff. Next thing you know, there is more of this stuff. Trail systems tend to increase property values, and I imagine you're going to hear more about that today, but I know that the National Association of Realtors a couple of years ago was on board really supporting all kinds of bike ped facilities and trail systems in particular, because they found that properties would sell faster and closer to the asking price than properties that were not close to such amenities. So economic growth is a big upside to creating single-track trail systems. Some of you may be aware of the Northeast Kingdom Trail System in Vermont. Quick show of hands, who knows what the Northeast Kingdom Trails are? A few of you do. So the Northeast Kingdom Trails are a series of almost 100 miles of mountain bike trail built on private land with license agreements, basically handshake agreements, in a economically depressed part of Vermont that now account for better than $5 million annually in the local economy. The Kingdom Trails are an international destination for mountain bikers. People fly to that part of the country just to ride on that trail system. They stay in the inns, they eat in the restaurants, they spend their money there. So don't think that this is all about just rustic trails and walking out in the backcountry, because they can be true drivers of economic prosperity in communities. Single-track trails are low impact. They are, easily put in, easily moved, easily removed. They're pretty non-permanent. Generally, they can be built by hand, and in many cases, built by volunteers. And as I mentioned, they're enjoyed by many user groups. Here's an illustration of some volunteers building a section of trail in Yarmouth, and these are great community events that bring together people of all ages to do something positive in their community that gives them a sense of ownership in their community. So when we talk about the way in which trails can really engage people in their communities and in finding value in where they live, getting folks out for building these things actually has some real upsides to engaging folks as well. As I mentioned, I think we are in the midst of an explosion of single-track trail development, and the answer is, of course, that Santa Claus also likes to use trails. You can see he paid a quick visit out to Yarmouth last winter. More seriously, I think that we're seeing a kind of explosion of trail development, not just in Maine, but really almost nationwide, that is driven by a number of things coming together at the same time. I mean, the obesity epidemic and the strategy to try and address the obesity epidemic being driven by the public health folks are one of the drivers for the creation of these low-cost trail systems. Towns are increasingly looking for alternatives in their rec departments to the ball field and bus trip model. And building sustainable trail systems is something, as I said, that brings people together, it engages them in the community, and it also creates a lasting piece of infrastructure on really parcels that don't need to be very large. So as a result, they can be they help build a sense of community. They're easy to build by hand with volunteers. I think that one of the big drivers around here, at least, are indeed mountain bikers. Mountain bikers are willing to come out and build trails if you let them do it. You give them a little guidance, you lay out a sustainable trail, and they will come and help you build that trail, and help you maintain that trail, and help you find money to maintain that trail. So if you are a representative of a municipality in the room here, and you're wondering how to do this, speak to me about engaging your local mountain bike people, because they will turn out. And I think that there's a number of communities represented in the room here right now who will tell you that that is true. But the trails that are built are indeed enjoyed by a lot of different groups, not just mountain bikers. I was just kind of off the top of my head stealing out like single track systems that I'm aware of in Maine and where I've actually gone and ridden my bike or walked around. And I'm sure that this is just a snapshot. I'm sure that Steve can fill in a lot more places where single-track systems are being developed. I want to emphasize that there's a lot going on in the SustainSouthernMaine region with respect to single-track development, so it's a very timely topic to be addressing right now. Here's just a few shots of some of the trail systems that are in the area. Is there a laser on this thing? No. But all the red stuff that you can kind of see there, those represent single-track pieces in the town of Cape Elizabeth. Falmouth has a number of parcels all over the place, and their trails are illustrated in green. Yarmouth, again, the green parcels indicate town-owned open space. The red lines indicate trail systems that are either existing or proposed. The stuff down at the bottom here is the West Side Trail, which is illustrated here. So this is a trail system that's been built in the last 2 years, primarily within a CMP corridor, primarily with volunteer labor, and with funding from groups as diverse as the Rotary Club and Healthy Maine Partnerships, with a little bit of town support here and there. Certainly the town has been a good partner in this project. CMP gets props as well for being a good partner on this. This trail system has gone in about 2 years. It's over 4 miles in length, and right now as we speak we're working on the last segment that goes out to Cousins Island. So you'll be able to actually walk, ride, snowshoe from Route 1 up by the exit all the way to the tip of Cousins Island, with just a couple of pavement crossings and that one long stretch over the bridge onto Cousins Island. Again, I was just trying to pull out some examples of the Sustain Southern Maine area where this kind of stuff is going on, and Steve's going to talk more about it. The Smith Preserve in Kennebunkport Conservation Trust lands is George W. Bush's private mountain bike stash. It is a well-maintained network of trails, and it's a great place to ride. It is, again, maintained through a variety of partnerships, including lots of mountain bike types. And so big deal, you might say. I mean, trails have always been a part of life in Maine. Well, how is this different? What's the big deal here? And the difference is this, that the new trail systems that we're seeing going in are, they're designed, they're thought about, they're built with permission. They're built on land on which public access is permitted. They are more deliberately meandering. They're laid out ahead of time with more attention to the sustainability of the trail and to accessing desirable areas. And if you think about it, and the trails that you might have, wandered around on a few years ago in Maine, such trails, legacy trails you might call them, were just kind of ad hoc trails. Sometimes if they're on a parcel of land, they're existing without landowner permission, and some of the imperatives that drive the location of the trail are, we don't want the landowners to know we're here, or we want to be as far away from the landowner's perception as possible. Oftentimes, they're not thinking about sustainability, they're riding through wet areas. In contrast, the contemporary trail systems that are going in are thought about. They are designed to be more sustainable. So they are more resistant to erosion and degradation. They are more environmentally sensitive in their location and design. They are meeting the user needs and expectations, so you don't have as much braiding and a bunch of additional wandering. They're designed to be used in all seasons and by most types of non-motorized recreation. They're a little bit dicey for use by horses, but horse use can be addressed if you think about it early enough in the process. Done right, these trails require minimal maintenance, and they are designed to be used by multiple groups without having a lot of conflict. So a well laid out trail system prevents the mountain bikers from going so fast that they're really getting the hikers angry, and the hikers are usually able to get good line of sight visibility of other users. So the idea is that speeds are kept low and everyone is able to coexist comfortably out there. With respect to fall line versus contour, this is something I mentioned. The big difference, I think, in the contemporary trail systems versus some of the legacy trails that exist around are that the new trail systems try to be contour trails. They try to be side hill trails. Instead of going up and down a fall line, these trails are trying to go on the side hill. They are benched to varying degrees, full bench or half bench. This looks like, that's barely a side hill, the one in the bottom there. But the idea is that these trails never kind of stay in the fall line long enough for running water to get up enough speed that it causes big erosion problems. We want to build it once and have to do as little maintenance on it afterwards as possible. If you look at the one in the upper left, you can see that when it goes up and down the fall line, you can see right in the middle there's actually a gully that's really occurring. And you can see that in a lot of trails that are older and simply we're built to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible. The new trails are designed much more with an experience in mind, and the length of the trail and the quality of the trail is part of the experience. So it's not about transportation as much as it is an experience in the woods. Other techniques that we use to kind of manage water flow are grade reversals. So again, instead of letting water get a head of steam up on a downhill segment, what we'll do is we build into the trails grade reversals that shed water. Generally all of our side hill trails have outslope, so they are built in a way that the water sheets off them and almost never creates any kind of running velocity that could start erosion. In terms of general design principles, the contemporary trail systems are done with this kind of stacked loop idea where you can have various user groups attended to at various points in the system. If you had like a single parcel, this would be something that would be totally doable on as little as as little as 100 acres. I've been involved with a project that did a system very like this on about 250 acres, and there was close to 20 miles of trail within that 250 acre parcel. In terms of the process, and I'm just going to skim through this quickly because I'm sure I'm running over. The important thing is to find a parcel. And there's town-owned parcels, places where it's where ownership is clear and you can get a relationship established with the property owner is critical. All these contemporary trail systems are built with permission. The sustainability of these trail systems is dependent upon the owners of the parcels being supportive of them, so we want to make sure we get permission, have good relationships. Trail licenses are basically a verbalization of a handshake agreement. They're a very flexible tool that a lot of landowners are comfortable signing because they're almost revocable at will. The next step would be to pull together people who can help, which involves, as I said, mountain bikers, bike shops, civic organizations. The Rotary Club has been very helpful in the area for a number of projects. Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. We've got a number of projects that Boy Scouts are helping us out with. Town committees, town conservation commissions, great partners in this stuff. Finding sources of funding, it's always good to have a little money to build bridges or buy snacks for the group. Your local HMP used to be able to help you with snacks. I don't know how much they're able to do that anymore. Again, Rotary Club and Kiwanians, groups like that are really helpful. The Recreational Trails Program administered by the state's Department of Conservation, Agriculture, and Forestry. I'm not sure if I got those in the right order, but that entity still exists, and they are major funders of trail projects. Individual donations, town funds. So getting some money together is important. The next step is kind of surveying and getting an inventory of what's on the property that you're considering building a trail system on, having a sense for, what the both control points of the trail system might be, the places that are both attractors and places you want to stay away from. Thinking about wetlands, vernal pools, things that you don't want to get too close to, as well as vistas where you might want to get a little close to, are all things you want to kind of inventory in your planning process. You want to think a little bit about who's going to use this trail. Who are you designing this for? And if you're thinking non-motorized users, primarily walkers, bikers, and runners, which most of the single track is built for, it becomes pretty simple. If you throw horses into the mix, it gets more complicated. If you throw motorized users into the mix, it gets still more complicated. But if you keep it simple and non-motorized, it's actually not super complicated. Traditional uses actually often benefit from such trail systems because single track provides great ways for hunters to get into properties that might be open for hunting. The design is simply, a process of, walking around, getting to know the terrain well, skipping down to walk and flag the proposed trail. I didn't bring an example of them, but what we use are small flags like those kind you see for invisible fence yard systems to tell you. So you use a bunch of those and you can actually pin out the exact route of the trail, spacing those flags. We started about 10 to 15 feet, and as we get things more and more dialed in, we'll actually tighten up the pin flagging to as little as 5 feet in some cases, so you can really chart out with a lot of accuracy exactly where you want the treadway to go. We flag out the proposed trail. We talk to the necessary people to review the trail, make sure that we are on board with any permitting that might be required, and then pretty much you set up a trail day and you build it. We built over a mile of trail last Saturday in Cape Elizabeth with 13 people. We did our homework ahead of time. We were all on town land. We laid out a good sustainable trail, and it really boiled down to just some raking and a little handwork and light sawing. I don't even think we started a chainsaw the whole day. And it's amazing how fast they go in. That concludes my talk. If you'd like more information, that's my contact info. Thank you for listening. If you have questions, you can catch me later.
And we'll have time for discussion later. Understand.